It's Monday, May 29. In the headlines, water prohibition in effect. Condolences pouring in for late founder of the Lasco group of companies, Lascelles Chin. In business news, on this week's Young Boss, we are introduced to Sandra Roden from the Little Bamboo Hut. Regionally in Antigua, Prime Minister urges former Liat workers to act decisively on a compassionate offer. Internationally, U.S. President Biden says final U.S. debt ceiling deal is ready for Congress vote. And in sports, Sharika Jackson wins women's 200 meters in Wanda Diamond League. This is the news on PBC Jamaica. I'm Simone Absalom Gale. The prohibition notice announced by the National Water Commission is in effect. This means water supplied by drought-affected systems must not be used for activities that require a considerable or excessive amount of the commodity. Minister with responsibility for water and climate change, Senator Matthew Samuda, says the affected communities will be advised about the hard-hit systems as a result of the continued dry spell. He was speaking on Friday during the sitting of the Senate.
Mr. President, we have managed the extreme drought relatively well up until this point. We had hoped that traditional rainfall patterns for May would hold and give us the relief that we need. It is possible that this could still happen because you do measure for the month, you don't necessarily measure by week. But it is important that Jamaicans are aware of the situation we face and the risks associated.
Condolences are pouring in for the late founder of the Lasco group of companies, Lascelles Chin, who died in the United States Saturday night. Prime Minister Andrew Holness describes him as a visionary leader and advocate for change. Mr. Holness said in a Twitter post, quote, "His entrepreneurial prowess transformed Lasco into a household name, while his philanthropy uplifted countless lives," end quote. Opposition leader Mark Golding, in a Twitter post as well, said Chin was one of Jamaica's great entrepreneurial visionaries. CEO of Grace Kennedy Group, Don Webby, described Chin as a Jamaican icon and recalled that the late Lasco founder would often send him, quote, "notes of encouragement and congratulations," end quote, throughout his career. In its tribute, the private sector organization of Jamaica, PBCJ, said Mr. Chin dedicated his entire life to establishing an extraordinary entrepreneurial and philanthropic legacy that spans over 6 decades. The PBCJ also extends its condolences to the family, colleagues, and friends of the late Lascelles Chin. Relatives, friends, and colleagues commemorated the 93rd anniversary of the birth of the Most Honorable Edward Seaga, former Prime Minister of Jamaica, with a floral tribute at the National Heroes Park on the weekend. Edward Seaga's love for Jamaica was evident in everything he did. So says Prime Minister Andrew Holness.
He saw that culture, Jamaican culture, had value and it could be monetized. He probably wouldn't have used that word at the time, but he saw that you could convert culture into a product, not a commodity, into a product that could have market value that could be used in the development of the country. And he created something called Things Jamaican.
In her remarks, Minister of Culture, Gender, Entertainment and Sport, Olivia Grange, noted his work towards creating dozens of national institutions, most of which are still in operation.
The Most Honorable Edward Philip George Seaga's singular commitment to Jamaica and its people unlocked the door to his tremendous talents in a wide range of areas and led to the creation of over 60 national institutions that continue to nurture, educate, finance, acculturate, and protect us. Many Jamaicans here and overseas know him as one of the most consequential political and cultural leaders that this country has ever produced. Others remember him as the rescuer of our economy and our democratic institutions at a time in our history when both seemed to be in mortal peril.
Mr. Seaga is described as a serious and sharp thinker, witty and gifted in producing the apt cutting phrase.
He earned the trust of all of us, all the communities, as a reliable friend, as a wise advisor, as a true father figure. Didn't smile a lot at times, but when he smiled, it was just beautiful. He was jovial. He had a sense of humor. He was warm and loving. But I can tell you, he was stern when he felt it was necessary.
Mr. Seaga was the 5th Prime Minister of Jamaica, serving from 1980 to 1989, and the leader of the Jamaica Labour Party from 1974 to 2005. He served as the leader of the opposition from 1974 to 1980, and again from 1989 until January 2005. He was born on May 28, 1930, and died on May 28, 2019. He was buried on June 23, 2019 at the National Heroes Park. The National Fisheries Authority, NFA, will be upskilling about 40 fisher folks through training intended to improve safety on the job. Chief Executive Officer Dr. Gavin Bellamy says the fisher folk will be trained in both dive techniques and safety at sea, first aid and navigation. Persons will also be trained in the use of safety equipment such as life jackets, global positioning system and compasses, as well as receive certification from the CMU, that's the Caribbean Maritime University. Mr. Bellamy says the training will be done in partnership with the Caribbean Maritime University and the University of the West Indies, Mona. For more information on how to access sessions, locations, and schedule, persons can contact the NFA at 876-948-9014. That's 876-948-9014. Time now for the Business Report with Danita Rodney.
Welcome to the Business Report. I'm Danita Rodney. With this week's Young Boss, bamboo is the name of the game. From the Little Bamboo Hut, we feature co-owner Sanjay Roden.
I am Sanjay Roden, CEO of the Little Bamboo Hut. Well, it is a bamboo business, so just giving you an overview. I did not initially start the business. I became a part of it. There's a partner of mine, Angelica, that started the business back in 2019, when we would have seen this aspect of a straws being banned, plastic ban, all of that. She had that drive back then in 2019 to create straws from bamboo, which is a pretty cool idea, because as it relates to what bamboo does for the environment, it is a very renewable resource because it grows really quickly, like many inches overnight. I won't tell the specifics, but if you understand how much it is renewable and how much it aids in the environment, even as it relates to carbon dioxide and the amount of carbon dioxide that it takes in from the environment, it was really a brilliant idea. So when I met her a couple of years ago, I think a year after she started, I would have expressed interest, and then a little on after that, we created a partnership, and yeah, so we are working together since then to take the business from strength to strength. What sets our business apart is what we offer and our ability to tap into clientele. So we've noted what our target market is, and specifically the tourism market and the food and industry market. What we've done over the last couple of years, we'd have tapped into the food industry because of the plastic ban, and we'd have started out with straws. It was big back then as it relates to bamboo straws. I know we've kind of transitioned into paper straws, but what we want to do is that we want to transition from not just what we do as it relates to utensils, meaning bamboo utensils, bamboo straws, but to see if we can go big. Big meaning bamboo in construction. A lot of people don't know this, but a lot of floors, wooden floors that you've seen overseas, bamboo floors. We have bamboo cloth as well. Some people use bamboo even in their meals in other spaces like Asia, etc. So when you look across the world, in Europe, we see people using bamboo for various ornaments, and that gives us the drive because we know that a market exists internationally. But more importantly, if we have the capacity to tap into our local market and to just, take over that space, then we can look at how we scale up to go international and take our business from the little bamboo hut to the big bamboo hut. Generally, I'm not one with fear and doubt, but when you have roadblocks, you just have to create a plan. And that is how I see it. I think through mentorship and seeing how others would have done it, which is something I do through reading a lot, you normally get that drive to understand that even if you don't have it all together at once, the important thing is to start. What kills all your fear is to really start, to take that step out into the deep. And when you take that step out into the deep, you will learn how to swim. Eventually, you'll try and move with your hands and seeing that it doesn't work. You try moving your hand and your feet and you realize you're doing it wrong. Then you try moving them together until you get it right. So I have that hope in that eventually we'll get it right and the formula will be just how it should be so that we can become as successful as we want to see ourselves in the next 5 years. Well, the biggest achievement so far would have been tapping into a certain group of clientele in the food industry, and that would have given us a good enough line of production, and we want to take that achievement bigger with our 5-year plan. And we are really proud that we'd have gotten clientele, and that's something that's very important, because for any business, if you know you're selling something, you want somebody to sell it to. So if it's a case where we have that, we are really grateful for that, and we invite others to reach out to us, the Little Bamboo Hut, wherever you can find us on any platform, and we're here and ready to serve, and we definitely will be tapping into those other lines of clientele so that we can scale up and become a name, a force to reckon with in the bamboo industry. Well, it's been really good. Right now we're in a production phase, trying to get everything together so we tap into a larger customer base. What we want to do as young professionals, young entrepreneurs, is that we want to take over the bamboo space, because it's been an industry that we've been trying to tap into for a while, meaning Jamaica, and we have not been able to actively tap into it the way we want to. So even for some retailers here in Jamaica, they would import certain products from overseas, but what we want to do is we want to change the space, tap into it, but that takes significant investment, of course. So we're looking on how we scale up, how we move forward to get the production right so that we can meet the demands of our clientele, and demands do exist, and we intend to meet them in the short term and furthermore upon scaling up in the long term. They can find us on Instagram, they can find us on Twitter, they can email us. It's the same 4 words, the Little Bamboo Hut, THELIKKLEBAMBOOHUT @gmail.com, or the same 4 words, the Little Bamboo Hut, on Instagram or Twitter, and that is where you can find us.
For your market updates, in foreign exchange trading for Friday, May 26th, the US dollar sold for an average of $155.33. The Canadian dollar ended trading at $115.52. The pound sterling traded for $192.57, and the euro sold for an average of $170.14. In JSE trading, the JSE index advanced by 2,660 points. The junior market index advanced by 1 point. The combined market index advanced by 2,495 points, and the All Jamaican Composite Index advanced by 3,017 points. Overall market activity resulted from trading in 102 stocks, of which 53 advanced, 32 declined, and 17 traded firm. Stocks advanced for Access Financial Services Limited, Barita Investments Limited, and Caribbean Assurance Brokers Limited. Stocks declined for CAC 2000 Limited, Consolidated Bakeries Jamaica Limited, and Edufocal Limited. Trading firm were 138 Student Living Jamaica Limited, 138 Student Living Jamaica Limited Variable Preference, and AMG Packaging and Paper Company Limited. The overall volume leaders were Trans-Jamaican Highway Limited with over 5 million units, Darimon Trading Company Limited, and Stanley Motor Limited ordinary shares with over 2 million units. In regional stocks, in Trinidad and Tobago, Calypso Macro Index Fund posted 416 shares. On the Barbados Stock Exchange, Barbados Farms Limited was the sole security trading 1,000 shares. In regional business, the Trinidad and Tobago Manufacturers Association continues its efforts to increase trade relations, this time with Suriname.
The Trinidad and Tobago Manufacturers Association will be leading a trade mission to Suriname on June 17th to 22nd, 2023. The TTMA's CEO Ramesh Ramdeen shared some insights with Business Watch earlier today.
The delegation at this time is 19 companies with 28 participants. We will have representation from Export TT, Exim Bank, and TTMA at the highest level. Part of the mission is not just to get exports into the Suriname market, but source items from Suriname into Trinidad, namely inputs into manufacturing.
The trade mission will also be taking place at the same time as the Suriname's Energy, Oil and Gas Summit and Exhibition. According to Mr. Ramdeen, the mission will be non-energy related.
In international business, in the United States, Republican House Speaker Kevin McCarthy over the weekend dismissed some opposition to a new agreement with President Joe Biden to suspend the debt ceiling, predicting that most House Republicans will support the deal.
So it's not 100% what everybody wants, but when you look, the country is going to be stronger. This is going to be transformational.
After tough negotiations to reach a tentative debt ceiling deal with the White House, the next challenge for U.S. House Speaker Kevin McCarthy is pushing it through his chamber. On Sunday, McCarthy dismissed vehement opposition among party hardliners, predicting that most House Republicans would support the deal to suspend the $31.4 trillion debt ceiling.
This is a good, strong bill that a majority of Republicans will vote for.
But not everyone agrees. Members of the hardline House Freedom Caucus said they would try to prevent the agreement from passing the House in a vote expected on Wednesday. Republican lawmaker Chip Roy wrote on Twitter Sunday that the agreement would leave intact an expansion of the IRS set in place when Democrats controlled both chambers of Congress. Republican Ken Buck tweeted, "I am appalled by the debt ceiling surrender." And Senator Lindsey Graham tweeted, "Do not intend to default on debt, but will not support a deal that reduces the size of the Navy and prevents continued technological and weapons assistance to Ukraine." A failure by Congress to deal with its self-imposed debt ceiling before June 5th could trigger a default, according to the Treasury Department. That would shake financial markets and send the United States into a deep recession. Narrow margins in both chambers of Congress mean that moderates from both sides will have to support the bill. Republican opposition could also spell trouble for McCarthy. To win the Speaker's gavel, McCarthy agreed to enable any single House member to call for a vote to unseat him, potentially making him vulnerable to ouster by disgruntled Republicans. But on Sunday, the Speaker said he was not at all concerned about that possibility.
Not at all. Not at all.
In market data for oil prices were steady after U.S. leaders reached a tentative debt ceiling deal, possibly averting a default in the world's largest economy and oil consumer. Brent crude futures slipped 20 cents to $76.75, while West Texas Intermediate crude was at $72.58 a barrel, down 9 cents. And that was the business report on PBCJ. I'm Danita Rodney.
In regional news, pressure your union to accept the government's compassionate offer while it stands. That's the advice from Antigua and Barbuda's Prime Minister Gaston Brown to former LEAT workers as he urges them to take matters into their own hands.
The union, the Antigua Workers Union, they continue to play politics. They're driven by the politics. And they well know that the government does not owe the staff of LEAT. And what they need to do now is to put some pressure on the union to accept the 32%.
The 32% represents the Antigua and Barbuda government's share in the regional carrier when it collapsed. Now, the Prime Minister says since last year, the government made it clear to the workers that the offer, which was initially 50%, would not remain on the table forever.
We said to the LEAT workers that if they did not accept the 50%, that we'll withdraw it. And if you all remember those discussions. Well, we haven't withdrawn it as yet. But we've since reduced it to 32%. And it is within the right of the government to withdraw it completely.
The government has also indicated and reaffirmed that the compassionate offer is just that, a compassionate offer, since there is no legal obligation that it has to the former LEAT workers in relation to severance payments.
Trinidad and Tobago's first private neonatal intensive care unit was launched on Saturday. Terry-Ann Brown-Campbell filed that story.
According to one of this country's leading obstetricians, Dr. Karen Sohan, this country has long been in need of a private neonatal intensive care unit. Dr. Sohan made the remark as she presided over the launch of the Sani Giovanni Women's Hospital new neonatal intensive care unit.
1 in 10 pregnancies come before time. That is, the babies are born prematurely. It means that no matter how good your obstetric care is, even if you have the best obstetrician, 1 in 10 babies will make their appearance before time, requiring a NICU.
Meanwhile, Corporate Secretary for the medical facility, Megnath Gosain, noted the local healthcare sector has a long way to go.
In many cases, the public healthcare system is not delivering the quality of healthcare that the public expects, while the cost of healthcare in the private sector is considered too high for many, particularly for low income and those without insurance coverage to support them.
The new unit, according to the staff of the facility, has 2 incubators and is the first private NICU in the Caribbean. Terry-Ann Brown-Campbell, TTT News.
In Ghana, the Ministry of Health says they are committed to fulfilling all the needs of the victims and relatives affected by the fire that destroyed the Madia Secondary School's dorm, which claimed the lives of 19 children.
In a press statement, the ministry said medical and mental health situations represent an urgent challenge, and it is grateful to all the private groups and international bodies that have offered and are providing support in the medical, mental health, and other social support responses. However, local private groups that are offering support for the medical and mental health responses are being urged to coordinate and integrate their efforts with the health ministry to avoid duplication and confusion among those affected. The ministry is presently working with partners including PAHO, WHO, UNICEF, Mount Sinai, Northwell, and Columbia University to put together a comprehensive, acute, short-term, medium-term, and long-term mental health response program built on a strong psychological first aid, PFA, and skills for psychological recovery, SPR response. Outside of the public health capacity, support from international partners and local partners is critical for the effectiveness of PFA and SPR, and it welcomes the offer of support from partners both local and international. Guyanese are assured that the health ministry continues to support the survivors and their families to provide dedicated care wherever needed, and a needs assessment with relatives and community leaders has been finalized. The statement added that the MOH is dedicating all resources necessary to prioritize the full recovery of the students currently hospitalized and to ensure that relatives receive the help they require to cope with the loss of lives. In reporting mental health issues, the ministry is asking the media and social media influencers to be particularly sensitive to information shared and adhere to international guidelines. Reporting must be shaped by factors such as concern for grieving families, attempting to balance public interest and privacy, challenges to accessing the facts of a story, the release stressed.
In international news, U.S. President Joe Biden is urging members of Congress to vote for a deal he has negotiated with Republican House Speaker Kevin McCarthy to raise the debt limit. The agreement increases the amount of money government can borrow, avoiding a potentially catastrophic default. More from Al Jazeera.
President Biden arrives back at the White House. On the schedule, yet another phone call with the Speaker of the House, in which is confirmed that the budget agreement is now ready to move to the full Congress.
The Speaker and I made it clear from the start that the only way forward was a bipartisan agreement. That agreement now goes to the United States House and to the Senate. I strongly urge both chambers to pass that agreement. Let's keep moving forward on meeting our obligations and building the strongest economy in the history of the world.
Optimism too from Kevin McCarthy, who dismissed reports of discontent among Republican House members, saying a conference call on Saturday indicated the majority were in favor of the agreement.
Well, that's okay, because more than 95% of all those in the conference were very excited. But think about this. We finally were able to cut spending. We're the first Congress to vote for cutting spending year over year.
But there are conservative Republicans who argue the budget cuts are too modest, and equally there are progressive Democrats who insist they are too stringent. There are some in these opposing flanks that may well vote against the bill. The question is whether there's enough moderate support on both sides of the aisle to push the legislation through in both the House and the Senate. The grave consequences of a default could be an energizing factor for bipartisan action.
There's a ton of partisanship, and it makes it very difficult and very acerbic in Washington. But I think this is, when all's said and done, when you close the doors and get the principals in the room, there is still some capacity for the parties to reach decisions. Granted, again, with that sword of Damocles hanging over their head, because it really, both sides agreed, it wasn't acceptable for the government to have a default.
The legislators will have 72 hours to read the bill, and the aim is to hold a vote in the House on Wednesday. Mike Hanna, Al Jazeera, Washington.
In sports, world champion Sharika Jackson won the women's 200 meters on Sunday at the Prince Mahaly Abdullah Stadium, running a season best of 21.98 seconds. Kingston-based Antonique Strachan was second in a personal best 22.15, while American teenager Tamari Davis set a lifetime best 22.30 seconds for third place. A trio of Jamaicans were second, third, and fourth in the women's 400 meters hurdles that was won by American Shamair Little in 53.95 seconds, with all 8 athletes recording a season's best times. Clayton was second in 54.15. Shiana Soman was in third at 54.42, and Genevieve Russell was fourth in 55.41 seconds. And that's the news on PBCJ. You can follow us on our social media platforms at PBCJamaica. Thank you so much for watching.